Good time zone, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Iodine. I'm your host, Benny. And, welcome to the stream. Happy spooky season. It is October 1st, which means that spooky season has officially begun. As you can tell by the music. But also, today, my second novel, Suicide, has been released on Amazon. You can find links around everywhere. But for right now, I'm gonna be reading it. Gonna be reading it live for everybody. And it will remain on YouTube forever. For free. How about that? So how's it going, Batman? How are you doing? So now, you said you're watching Star Trek, Batman. Did you go back and start the original series, or are you still, did you watch The Next Generation? Cool. Well, just remember, season 1 is not that great. There are a few episodes that are pretty good, and Tasha Yar is a great character. But the series doesn't really get very good until Riker grows his beard, which starts in season 2. All right. So let's go ahead and get this this live read started. Alright. This is Suicide by Bennykill709. Prologue. The sidewalk seemed overly harsh to Christina's pounding feet. She stumbled along the flat ground and fell against the wall. She groaned at the pain shooting out from her dislocated arm, knocking against the coarse brick building exterior. She nearly fell to the ground, hardly the first time it would have happened. Just walking was hard enough, even before the countless bruises and tears across her body. There weren't many people walking around, but she was garnering looks from all of those who noticed her. After making it up the stoop and into the building, Christina breathed an exhausted sigh. The hard part was done. She could use the elevator to get up to the 5th floor. She was relieved that she didn't have to share it, but as soon as she stopped out onto her floor, she noticed her neighbor standing in the hallway, as she always seemed to do. Christina tried to stand up straight and carry herself normally, but it was an impossible task. Even if she were able to fake a healthy stride, there was no way she could hide her swollen split lip, black eye, or the small spots of blood staining her torn blouse. Her neighbor was shocked. She kept her eyes locked on Christina as she slowly passed. Just as Christina opened the door to her apartment, she looked back over to her neighbor and watched as she extended her middle finger. The gesture was in contrast to the look of worry on the woman's face. Christina raised a confused eyebrow, then silently entered her apartment. She blew another sigh of relief. Her journey was almost done, as long as Christina reacted as expected. She pulled a chair into the center of the main room and took a seat, then drew a heavy object from the pocket of her coat and gripped it tightly. She took a deep breath and sat silently for a moment. As if she had awoken from a nightmare, Christina screamed at the top of her lungs and cowered into her chair, trying to make herself as small as possible. Through her uncontrollable shaking and shouting, she peeked through her eyelids at the room. The nightmare wasn't over. She was paralyzed with fear. It was over a minute of terrified screams before she realized that she was holding something. She gathered the courage to open her eyes again and saw her father's revolver in her grip. Using it for defense didn't cross her mind, nor did she care to take the time to see if it was loaded. She knew what needed to be done. Without hesitation, she put as much of the barrel in her mouth as she could and pulled the trigger. Let me take a brief moment here. I need to go make some posts. I have to return some videotapes. You're gonna start playing Red Dead? I hope you can download it, because that's a pretty big game. Surviving 100 days in RDR2. Cool. Okay. Let me just check my post here. So you read all of Long Halloween? Did you enjoy it? Are you gonna watch the animated movie movies. Oh, you only read issue 1. I see. Well, I was about to spoil it for you. Ask you about what you thought about the end of it. But I'll leave that. Nah, I'll let you experience it yourself. Okay. Chapter 1. Disinterested eyes watched the city go by as the automated vehicle approached the crime scene. Theo was thinking about his wife. He often was. He nervously flipped a weighty chrome stylus through his fingers until he made the decision to send her a message. He swiped his thumb across the stylus' surface, the motion controlling a cursor in his vision. Moving the cursor to the bottom left corner of his vision brought up a list of apps. He selected messaging, and at the very top of the list of contacts was Kara Mitchell, embellished by a star. When he clicked into the text field, a digital keyboard extended out from his stylus, floating in the air like a hologram that only he could see. He flicked the keys with the finger of his offhand to type out a short message in the air. TM, I hope you're having fun. Love you. Kissy face emoji. Cam. ... Theo stared at the dots, always waiting patiently for a response before closing the app or doing anything else. He usually didn't have to wait long, unless she was in the middle of a raid or whatever the hell she did in that game. Cam, love you. It wasn't quite the wall of emojis and flowery language that they used to exchange in their youth, but the words still filled Theo with a comfortable warmth. She was one of the few things he cherished, if not the only thing anymore. A short tone coming from a hidden speaker somewhere in the vehicle's cabin indicated that he had arrived at his destination. He stepped out of his car into the street, primarily lit by flashing blue and red LEDs. As soon as he moved away from his vehicle, the door closed, and it whirred off to find somewhere to park. The journey up to the victim's apartment was littered with beat cops, a few of whom displayed the distinct red dot indicating that they were recording their vision. Theo didn't really care to enforce the standard procedure of recording at all times when on duty. He just rolled his eyes and shook his head, then started recording his own vision as he approached. Not only was it required by law, but it was an invaluable tool for any investigator. Theo entered the lobby, but insisted on going up to the 5th floor by the stairs, just to make sure he got in his exercise for the week. The destination floor was a sty with officers doing nothing but holding up the walls and crowding his path. The victim's door was open. Theo stepped inside, passing under the digitally augmented police tape. The inside of the apartment was empty of officers, which would have been a breath of fresh air were it not for this young woman's corpse sitting in a chair in the middle of the room. Theo moved around behind her, observing the large hole in the base of her skull. Through the thick, bloodied hair, within the shredded bone and flesh, Theo could barely see the shine of metal shrapnel and wires. "You've got good eyes." Theo lifted his head to see Jacques, leaving the victim's bedroom. He was the crime scene videographer, and the closest thing to a friend that Theo had. They'd better be, as expensive as they were. I'm not a fan of how much they itch either, Theo said, bringing a finger up to rub his eyelids. She had a brainstem interface? Yep. Had is the operative word. She blew most of it away in her final act. I don't envy forensics having to piece that shit back together, if they can even find all the pieces. Jacques was moving along all the walls and the furniture, looking at it intently, scanning everything to be videogrammetrically recreated later in a digital environment. After slipping into a pair of latex gloves, Theo pointed at the girl and made eye contact with Jacques. Hey there, Pollo. Welcome. Sorry I didn't stream yesterday after I specifically told you I was going to. Depression's a bee, you know? So tell me what else has happened on October 1st. There's a lot of stuff. A third of the way done of Avian's Pass in Minecraft. That's good stuff. If somebody buys my book on Amazon, do I get notified of their details? I do not believe so. I don't think I'll get any details other than it might tell me what country it was purchased in. But I think that's pretty much the only information I get about whoever purchases it. Hey, congratulations on getting together with a crush. I'm 3/4 of the way done with Eagle 2. Nice. Good stuff. Alright, shall we continue? May I? Theo asked. Have at it. I already got her and the main room, the kitchen, and the bedroom. Gotta finish up with the bathroom, and I'm all done. Having been given the go-ahead, Theo pushed her from her hunched position back into the chair and let her head fall back. The once beautiful young woman was now battered, a battered, lifeless corpse, staring at the ceiling with dead eyes. Theo looked closely at her face, giving the police facial recognition software a chance to identify her. To Theo's surprise, the software was able to quickly come back with a profile, despite the significant bruising and swelling. The girl's profile matched that of the one in the case files. Christina Auberg was 19, a sophomore student at MIT, and had recently received a cybernetics interface implanted in her brainstem. Theo immediately checked to see if she had made her interface actively public, but as he expected, he only had access to her mobile and computer data, all of which stopped right when she had her operation a few months prior. Student at MIT. I don't imagine your daughter knows her, Theo asked. I don't think so. I'd ask, but she hasn't really been talkative lately. School, or a boyfriend, or what? No, it's that fucking game, Jacques said, shaking his head. He then looked at Theo. Wanderlust? Yeah, that one. I suppose you know a thing or two about it. Jacques realized he may have said something distasteful. He hoped that Theo didn't take it that way. I do, in fact, Theo said. There wasn't a response. There didn't need to be. The two quietly continued their work. The gun, tightly gripped in the girl's hand, was a .38 Special. In prying her hand from the gun, Theo heard the click of the trigger resetting. The sound made the hairs on the back of his neck stand up. Instead of trying to get the gun from her grip, he decided to release the cylinder and eject 4 live rounds still in the in the weapon. Remind me why there was a circus outside for a suicide? Jacques asked. His confusion wasn't unfounded. The suicide rate has spiked recently. The city doesn't think it is strictly suicide. There's pressure on the captain from outside to find out what's causing it. As he spoke, Theo bagged the ammunition, then continued trying to pry the weapon from her fingers. Why are they so convinced there's a criminal reason? I don't know, man, Theo said with a shrug. Probably one of the conspiracy theories that came out after the IA police misconduct report last year. Oh, well, a couple of those conspiracies turned out to be true, so I can't blame them. Theo agreed silently. Some people he had worked with for years, even people who were involved in his daughter's case, were fingered in the linked internal affairs report. It was a dark day for law enforcement across the country, but one that needed to happen. Whether or not this is a genuine suicide or something else, I feel pretty certain that these bruises and lacerations didn't come from general clumsiness, Theo said. He took a moment to make a note for the medical examiner, ordering a rape kit to be completed. He also requested an autopsy to determine the cause of death, just out of an abundance of caution. If you want to know what Avian's Pass is, it's the area where they hang out, with the agents, the factory and the surrounding village. Okay. Village was built by Lumotech to house the agents and new avians. What's up, Batman? The Montenegrin girl is in this. In fact, she is in this chapter. And I'll point her out when we get to it. But her name is Lily. Her name is Lily. That's who you're looking for, Batman. You haven't read any of this, huh? Or you weren't still here. You weren't here when I was writing it. In fact, Poyo, I don't think you were here either. Well, she has Montenegrin heritage, yes. Nice. I think that was when I was editing it for release, right after I finished doing the draft of Devour. Which Devour I need to set up for release as well. I'm going to be releasing that on January 1st of next year. Nice. I do remember having conversations about Devour and stuff with you. Okay. After bagging the gun, Theo stood up and looked into Christina's mouth. A ring of LEDs flipped on in his iris, and the iris of his left eye, and his visual interface software adjusted the image for optimal true color viewing. He saw the burn scars on her tongue, her broken teeth, and an ultra-high definition view of the hole passing through the back of her throat. He was unable to see any of the pieces of the implant, and so moved to look directly into her eyes. Theo hoped he would find an info band around the edges of her iris, indicate that her eyes were manufactured like his. It would have included product information and given Theo access to recorded visual data stored within the eye, but he found no such ring in either eye. When he looked into the pupil, however, he could see a faintly reflective golden ring. It was a telltale sign that, while her eyes were her originals, she had sensors installed around her optic nerves as part of the brainstem interface implant surgeries. Any footage she had would have been stored within the implant that was blown to bits along with the rest of her brainstem. Damn it, Theo remarked as he moved on. He pushed the girl's head back into its original position and took another, deeper look into the hole in the back. With a pair of tweezers, he pulled out a few pieces of the implant. He pulled out the few pieces of the implant he could see and placed them into another bag. He didn't bother with the fine filaments. That would be another job for the medical examiner. There were more pieces spread out across the ceiling and the rest of the room. Theo spent some time closely inspecting the blood spatter. With the help of his optical software, he was able to find a few more fragments, but eventually, there was nothing else he could do but send a polite note to the crime scene cleanup crew to keep a lookout. He moved into the adjoining kitchen and began looking through the drawers, fridge, and freezer. When he looked in the cupboards above the fridge, he reached behind a small nook in the back and pulled out an open bottle of Johnny Walker Blue Label. His eyes went wide at the find. He pulled off the cork and deeply inhaled the scent. The smell of the fine whiskey activated certain neural pathways in his brain. Pathways that were impossible for Theo to ignore. Theo closed his eyes and basked in the smell of honey and vanilla, enhanced by the subtle sting of spice and alcohol. The urge to taste it was overwhelming. The part of him saying that he shouldn't was a little larger than a whisper. Just as he was about to place it to his lips, Theo noticed Jock watching him, seeing what he would do. Theo corked the bottle and placed it back in its place in the back of the cupboard. "How you doing, T?" Jock asked with concern in his voice. "I'm doing okay, Jay." Theo didn't intend to sound so dismissive, but the lack of comfort in the topic came through anyway. Jock could hear it. He knew Theo was sensitive about it. But as a good friend should, he continued pressing. "And how's Kara doing?" Theo wanted to snap at him. For a moment, he felt like Jacques was insinuating something, accusing him of drinking and neglecting his wife. Again. But he took a breath and shook off the negative assumptions. "She's doing okay. I've been getting her to eat and stay hydrated, and I keep an eye on her vitals, but..." Theo crossed his arms as he trailed off with nothing else to add. "Well, just know that I'm available if you ever need someone to talk to. Chris, too. If you want someone a little more professional," Jacques said. Theo gave a silent and subtle nod. Jacques picked up his kit and started moving toward the door. I'm done here. The VR sim should be ready by end of day. If you need to take a look. He gave Theo a two-fingered wave and continued. Thank you for saying that, Poyo. Wait, Theo said, stopping Jacques in his tracks. Theo approached him and took his hand in a firm grip. Thank you, truly. I appreciate your concern. It's no problem, Theo. You remind me that maybe not all cops are bastards. I wouldn't go that far, Theo chuckled, as did Jacques. They parted ways, and Theo continued looking around the apartment for anything that might indicate that Christina's suicide may have been genuine. He also started a search on her socials and messaging history. He used an API from National Suicide Prevention that was able to find hints of suicidal ideation and deep depression with a high degree of accuracy. The only things that came back were a few off-color jokes from years ago. In general, Christina seemed like a joyful, life-loving optimist for her entire life. She never even had a morbid goth or emo phase, which Theo thought was a little strange in itself, but still not something notable. The only thing that was out of place was that her outgoing messages stopped, and her socials seemed suspiciously like bots over the past few days before her death. Theo skimmed Christina's online presence as he browsed her medicine cabinet. She wasn't taking anything except for antibiotics and some light painkillers, the expected regimen for her implant surgeries. Nothing was out of place in her bedroom either. From the toys and condoms in her dresser to the lone stuffed animal that just about every late teenage girl had. Theo may have been skeptical at first, but it certainly seemed like suicide wasn't in the cards for Christina. After searching the apartment, it was time to take statements. Theo set up an interview with Christina's boyfriend as he left the apartment to meet her neighbor, who was standing in the hallway next to a gaggle of useless badges. Theo approached her. Approached her. A gaggle. I'm not editing it. In fact, viewing. Okay. I can't. Yeah, the editing is restricted. Good. But let's see. What is the collective noun for pigs? A drift or a drove? A drove of pigs. So I should have changed that to a drove. Earlier I said sty, a sty of cops, or the area was a sty. Hate cops. All right. Miss Beckhart, is it? Theo said, reading off the profile information that came to him when he looked at her and shook her hand. That's right, she said, giving him a nervous smile. Mind if we talk inside? Theo didn't have to ask, as she was already guiding him through her open door. She closed the door once they were inside and offered Theo some water, which he refused. He did, however, accept the offer of a seat in her living room. "4 years, huh? Are you waiting until you're 18 to release it, or what?" I don't think you should have to wait that long. Is there a particular reason you're waiting until then? Okay. I much prefer you guys in plain clothes, Miss Beckhart said, as she sat down in the chair next to him. I get a bit of a fascist vibe from the uniforms. Though, I think you're leaning a little too far into the brooding, hard-boiled detective thing. What with the trench coat? Just missing the hat. I'll have you know that I kill it in this trench coat, Theo said. It wasn't the first time he had heard it, and I left my hat at home. For a moment, Theo's candor confused her. She wasn't sure if he was joking until he cracked a smile. Emmeline Beckhart was a victim of identity fraud that left her a penniless divorcee and estranged from her own daughter. With this public knowledge already at his fingertips, Theo could have guessed that the answer to his first question. How well did you know her? He asked. I see. Have you done any research into like alternative ways of posting it, or like I don't know where you might look for something like that? Maybe just start with asking ChatGPT. Like, how can I release my novel while I am under 18, or something like that. How well did you know her? He asked. Is she dead? Emma replied. It wasn't quite what he expected, especially with the number of cops in the hallway. Not one of them took a statement or informed her of the situation. I think you know the answer to that question, he said. Fuck, Emma said in a half whisper, shaking her head and holding back tears. Theo gave her a moment. I really liked her. She was smart and funny and ambitious. I mean, she was going to fucking MIT for Christ's sake. And she kind of reminded me of my own daughter, she said. Do you know if she has a history with drugs or alcohol? Well, I'll admit that I smoked a joint or two with her. A couple of shots. Shots? Theo said. Yeah, I mean, I know she's not 21 yet, but her father had just died, so... Was it a common occurrence? What? Her father dying? No, Theo said with a subtle chuckle, which turned to him clearing his throat. It may not have been with you, but do you know if she drank much socially, with her friends, or alone in her apartment? Never, Emma said, but immediately recanted. Well, almost never. I mean, I had never seen her drunk before. Even when we drank together, she had one shot and didn't seem fazed by it. But a couple days ago, I caught her leaving her apartment, and she seemed like she had more than a few. How could you tell? Was it her movement, or her speech, or could you smell it on her? Can release a novel in a few month intervals. It's cool. Definitely movement. She hit herself with the door on the way out and nearly planted her face into the wall. But when I passed her, I didn't smell alcohol at all. Anything else strange about her? Well, her makeup was different. Not great, in my opinion. But I also gave her our mutual greeting, and she seemed pretty confused by it. What's the greeting? Emma crossed her arms and shook her head with an embarrassed chuckle. I'd say stuff like, go fuck yourself, slut. And she'd respond by saying, like, at least I still can, you desiccated, oversized catcher's mitt. Wow, Theo said. That's quite the greeting. It's, you know, we didn't like each other when we first met. So you insulted the hell out of each other and then bonded over it? No, Emma said, momentarily offended, then continued. Well, yeah, actually. The point is, she seemed totally taken off guard by that. You said everything seemed normal up until that point? Yeah, pretty much. When did you next see her? Well, a few hours ago. I saw her in the hall coming out of the elevator. She looked absolutely terrible. She was covered in bruises and limping, and maybe drunk again, too. I flipped her off and then... You... gave her the bird? Yeah, you know, like waving hello. Okay, Theo said. What happened next? Well, she seemed confused again at my gesture, but she was also kind of hiding bruises and cuts, and went into her apartment and locked the door. I went to grab some tea to bring it over and talk to her, but before I could get there, I just heard her suddenly screaming bloody murder. I dropped the tea and ran for her door, but before I could get there, I heard the gunshot. Emma shook from the chills running down her spine, remembering those things that happened just hours before. Do you know if she came home at any point between when you saw her leave and when she came back? I don't think so. I mean, it's possible that she could have returned and left while I was sleeping, but these walls are kind of thin, so I hear just about everything. Everything? Theo raises eyebrows. You heard what I said. I guess that brings me to my next question. How well do you know her boyfriend, Michael Tenney? Not too well. I mean, I could tell you what he sounds like when they're doing it, but I'm not sure that'll be helpful. Did it ever sound non-consensual or otherwise violent? Not at all. I have heard them argue, but never full-on shouting matches or throwing shit or anything like that. All in all, they were just kind of your generic cute couple of kids and puppy love. Do you know what they argued about? Mostly about stupid video game or internet shit. Though, about a week ago, they did have a bigger fight. I asked her what it was about, but she wouldn't say. I think it was about sex stuff, but I'm not sure. I haven't seen nor heard him around since then. Okay, Theo said. Is there anything else that you think might be useful? No, I don't think so. Emma racked her brain. Theo stood up from his seat. In that case, I'll get out of your hair. Thank you for your time. And if you think of anything else, you can contact BPD and ask for Detective Mitchell. Thank you, Emma said as she rose to walk him to the door. Just as she was going to grab the doorknob, she interrupted him. Do you think... Theo turned around to look at her. She didn't seem confident in her question. Do I think what? Do you think this has anything to do with her new interface? I begged her not to get that damn thing. Oh, what do you mean? Like it was a botched surgery? No, like... I mean, you have cybernetic eyes, right? Aren't you worried about hackers and viruses and stuff? Yeah, I am. But that's why I'm always on the latest security update. That and Bell Westbrook pride themselves on their cybernetic security. Sure. My bank said... sure. My bank said their security was top-notch too. Then one day I'm in the red $500,000, and there was nothing they could do. Theo wasn't sure what to say. She wasn't wrong. He knew the hacks and viruses were possible, but there hadn't been any notable ones since the early days of optical implants, over a decade ago. Truly, Bell Westbrook was the leader in cybersecurity. No other corporation came close to their level of funding. Their tech was top of the line and widely available, and their operating system was the global standard, free to anyone. He thanked Emmeline again before leaving. This time he used the elevator, following Christina's last known itinerary. As soon as he stepped into the elevator car, he noticed a camera in one of the corners. Through his police access, he was able to view live and recorded footage from the city's CCTV systems. Not every building camera was on the system, so he was relieved when he was able to connect and see himself standing in the elevator. It also, thankfully, had the previous 72 hours of footage. He began to wind back the footage, watching the hordes of cops pour in and out of the elevator car. plane pilot killed them. As Michael has no reproductive system, he doesn't even have a cloaca. If an alien and Terran have a close emotional bond, a crossbreed is made. Interesting. Avians typically reproduce asexually, like birds just popping out eggs whenever. Okay. It's pretty good stuff. Kind of reminds me of an episode of Futurama. I just had deja vu. It almost feels like we had the exact same conversation last time. I know I've made the cloaca joke before. It's just a joke. Okay. When the flood of blue turned into a trickle and finally ended, he observed a few more cycles, each with one or two residents, but then he watched a cycle that didn't appear to have any passengers. Theo checked to see if there was any weight data for the elevator, but he had no such luck. He was still fairly confident of what he was looking at. Just a little behind the scenes here. Checking the weight data for the elevator. That is a reference to Ghost in the Shell, the first movie, 1995. Togusa does that at one point. Nice. Interesting. It's good that you're getting input from your science teacher. That's pretty cool. The citywide CCTV had hacker intrusions ever since the day it was integrated into the internet. The most popular script the hackers ended up using was also one of the first. It was designed to hide their image from connected cameras, using the police's own facial recognition system to do it. It became so commonly used that the police gained a reputation for having such an insecure system. While it was true that the police didn't have the funding or expertise to stay ahead of this hack, they did end up understanding how it works and ways to get around it. For example, the stealth script could dynamically edit out a full person's shape almost perfectly, but the facial recognition software had difficulty with warped images and reflections. In the shiny panels of the supposedly empty elevator, Theo could see subtle shadows moving, giving away its occupant that had been digitally hidden from view. Of course, searching through every available camera for subtle shadows, while effective, was incredibly time-consuming. Instead, Theo used another tactic that took advantage of a flaw in the facial recognition system. He first gathered pictures of Christina from her socials and from her own recorded footage, then modified the images, flipping them, and fed them into the search algorithm. It would take a short while for the search, and it was by no means perfectly effective, but he still expected to see a few results pop up across the city. In the meantime, he had another important statement to gather. He left the apartment, and by the time he reached the curb, his vehicle had pulled up with open doors. It was only a few minutes before Theo arrived at the requested meeting place, the Cherry Estate Greek Cookery. It makes me laugh every time I read it. Okay. The Cherry Estate Greek Cookery, a budget gourmet restaurant. He arrived before the dinner crowd and met Michael Tenning sitting at a table. The kid stood up awkwardly when he saw Theo approaching. Theo shook his metal hand. The kid clasped his second hand onto Theo's with a nervous, overly cordial gesture. Theo smiled. "Mr. Tenning," Theo said. "Yes, sir," the boy replied. Theo gestured, and they sat down at the table. Michael Tenning was 20, already a veteran and an amputee. After being honorably discharged, he met Christina through a dating app, and had been dating her for almost a year. Along with this information, Theo also observed Michael's location data that was given to him in response to his police request. Michael hadn't been anywhere near Christina's apartment during her missing time. "I've called you here because I have a few questions about Christina Auberg," Theo said. Michael's eyes darted down at the table, and his meat hand reached up to hold his face. Is she okay?" he asked. "I'm afraid not, Michael. Sorry to have to tell you this, but Christina has died." Theo paused to let Michael process what he had just heard. Theo saw a couple of teardrops land on the table, followed by a series of soft sobs. Theo was silent, waving away an approaching waiter, understanding that words were futile at this moment. Michael's hands trembled as he rubbed his eyes. He shook his head as though denying the reality before him. How did she... That's what I'm here to try and determine. It appears as if she shot herself with a .38 special. What? Michael looked up, confused and bearing an offended look. It was more evidence affirming Christina's general aversion to suicide. It appeared that way, but I don't have the complete picture. That's why I'm talking with you now. If there is some kind of foul play involved, I need your help to find it, Theo said. The anger in Michael's eyes was effectively deflected away from him. That gun. I think it was her father's gun. Michael continued shaking his head. I helped teach her how to shoot it. You think somebody might have killed her? That is the assumption that I'm working under currently. Yes. Theo saw Michael's mood settle on determination. He was ready to answer questions. You've been with her for some time, correct? Yeah, I met her almost a year ago now. I was planning on doing a special date night to surprise her. When did you last see her? It was a week ago, I think. Tell me about that. We met after class in the library to study, and she invited me over to her place for a nightcap, and I went home around midnight or so. You didn't stay the night? Well, I needed to get up early. Michael was clearly not saying something, but Theo had an idea of what it was. Am I wrong in assuming your relationship included sex? No, no, sir. Did either of you participate in any particularly rough sexual activity? Like BDSM or anything like that? No, nothing like that, Michael said. His face was turning red in embarrassment. I mean, she was kind of in spanking, I guess. Okay, accepting that. Did either of you ever hit each other? Whether accidental or during an argument? No, not at all. Never. I've got a source that mentioned an argument about a week ago. Theo watched Michael squirm in his seat as he spoke. Okay. Yes. Yeah. Yeah, we did argue. Was that the same night you last saw her? Yes. Michael knew what was coming. What was the argument about? Theo made sure he didn't convey that he thought that he had caught Michael omitting some details. Michael shrunk down in his chair, a sign of embarrassment and nothing else. She wanted to try something called pegging on me, he said. Theo remained perfectly professional. I assume you weren't amenable? Well, I mean, not necessarily. She just kind of sprung it on me, and I wasn't really ready for it. Might not have been so against it if I had more of a discussion first. Hey there, Martyr. Next book should be Reborn. Why do you say Reborn? What does that indicate? And yeah, the next book that I am working on is called Hopeless. Hi there, Sasha. My dog is sneezing and growling and making all kinds of noise. I don't know if you guys can hear that at all. Hi, Sasha. How are you? Okay, where was I? Okay. So you left, and that's the last time you were with her? Do you have any communication after that point? Why reborn? Because he is reborn. LOL, I don't know. I don't know about that. Poil, yeah, you can go ahead and try and come up with the slogan for Terminal Abyss. The slogan I currently have is endings without end, which I think is pretty cool. It's kind of what Terminal Abyss means. Or one interpretation of it, at least. Alright. Yeah, we messaged a few times after that. and I thought we had resolved the matter. But a few days ago, I tried messaging her without a response and chatting her socials, but the responses I got were weird, like bots had taken over her account. I don't know. I thought she was just taking a little break from the world and school and stuff, sinking into her interface. She got her interface a few months ago, is that right? Yeah. Do you have one? I've got some display meshes and oral implants, but not a brainstem interface. Not yet. I was going to get one soon, though. She made it seem pretty incredible. She liked the implants? Hell yeah. She was way into them. She kept saying that it was a whole new level of immersion. She spent a lot of time on the website called Chat Rooms or something. And she was starting to get really into Wanderlust. A little too much if you ask me. What do you mean? She didn't spend as much time on her schoolwork. I was worried that her grades were going to start slipping. But also, there was some mod on Wanderlust that she talked up, saying she read it was really, really scary. I was there when she tried it, and just seeing her reaction after, I could believe it. It really shook her. She could barely talk about it afterwards. It affected her that much? Yeah, well, like right after, sure. But then we watched a couple eps of some sitcom and she was back to normal. About how long ago was that? Probably the week before our argument, I guess. Do you know if she had any stalkers, online or off? Or any angry exes, enemies, etc.? Not really. Not as far as I know. I expect she probably had some weirdos following her online, from just being a young woman on the internet. That and the whole Middle Eastern thing she had. What's the plot of Suicide? I don't want to use the other words for the odd amount of reasons. The plot of Suicide is a detective starts investigating a rash of suicides that basically there's a lot of them. There's so many that the police and the public are becoming really concerned that there's something else going on. So he goes to start investigating them, and he finds a connection to a new brainstem interface that has come out on the market that allows people to interface with computers, you know, directly in their vision and stuff. And yeah, so at this point he's investigating the boyfriend of the woman that was killed that sets it off, Christina Auberg. She kills herself with a magnum, not a magnum, but a 38 special, a revolver. And yeah, but things seem a little strange about it, and she'd done it shortly after she got her operation to get a brainstem interface. It basically is Neuralink. I think, yeah, I'm sure I had started coming up with the story before Neuralink was a big thing. Where anarchy begins and hope there's to follow. That's pretty cool. Next one should be a war diary, and that could be called Reborn. I actually do kind of like that. That sounds pretty good. Reborn is a pretty good name for a story. Do I remember what you were gonna call the third book? I do not. The Eye of the Storm, that sounds kind of familiar, yeah. Okay. That and the whole Middle Eastern thing she had. Middle Eastern thing? Theo asked, raising an eyebrow. He wasn't quite sure of Michael's tone. Does she have some Jewish or Muslim heritage or something? No, not as far as I know. Auberg might be Jewish, I guess. But no. She was just really into Middle Eastern cultures and history ever since she took a trip when she was little. She had a tendency to use words and phrases from the religion in her usernames. Will sometimes get carried away talking about Jewish and Muslim history and stuff. And, I mean, I'm sure you've been on the internet in America ever. So, yeah. I've heard her explode about racist assholes before, but there hasn't been anything recent along those lines, as far as I know. Did she ever mention anyone who stood out to you? Nope. She always seemed pretty secure about her identity online and whatnot. Is there anything that you think I should know? I don't think so, but... Michael bowed his head. His human hand began shaking nervously in time with his leg. You don't think she did that because of me, do you? Because of our argument? If I'm being frank, I didn't know her at all. I wasn't there to hear what happened, so I can't say for certain at this point. And it's possible I may never be able to. But from what I've seen, I don't think she was the type of person to react in such an extreme way toward an argument like that. If there was some foul play involved, I don't believe it has anything to do with you. Theo reached across the table and held steady Michael's shaking hand. I'm sorry this happened. All I can do is promise you that I'll do everything I can to figure out what happened and to make sure anyone involved meets justice, Theo said. It was a cheesy, standard spiel, but Michael accepted it nonetheless. Thank you, Detective. Thank you, Detective. If you remember anything, you have my contact information. And if you feel like you need some support or just someone to talk to, you can contact BPT and we can refer you to some resources. Theo patted Michael's hand and stood up from the table. I may have further questions in the future. For the time being, please remain available. Michael nodded and shook Theo's hand again, noticeably less nervous now that he didn't feel he was a suspect. Theo left the restaurant, now with an itinerary of locations where Christina had been found by his facial recognition search from earlier. Unfortunately, there are only a handful of locations found. According to the timestamps, 2 of the locations were shortly after Christina stopped responding to messages, and another 3 in the hours before her death showed reflections of her sporting the injuries she had been found with. There are about 27 hours between that he couldn't account for. He needed more points of data. Theo began viewing the footage. Fun fact, Martin Luther King's real name is Michael. Is that Martin Luther King Jr. or his father, Martin Luther King Sr.? The first recording recognized her for less than a second, in the reflection of the building's glass facade. From here, Theo was able to follow the subtle shadows and artifacting down the street. Knowing her moving direction, Theo switched to cameras further down the street and looked for signs of the stealth hack. It wasn't a quick job. Theo had to inspect hundreds of different cameras, but gradually he was able to further narrow down her general path between each point. Still, there was a period of nearly 25 hours in which she was hidden completely, but it all seemed to be in a somewhat small area of the south waterfront. He selected it for his vehicle's destination. There were only 2 streets that intersected the unknown area, and an alley between them. It seemed the obvious place to start looking. The vehicle pulled up just to the point that he could see down the alley. He left his vehicle and walked down the alleyway, taking a few turns along the way. There were no lights and no cameras whatsoever. At least, none connected to the citywide CCTV, nor any that were immediately visible to him. Most of the alleyway was solid brick, but with few conspicuous doors and physical keypads. Have a good night, Batman. Thanks for watching. Fun fact, in school, when they were learning about Martin Luther, the Protestant, my teacher said, "So, as we see," student raised his hand, "Sir, why isn't he black?" Nah, he had a dream. This man had a nightmare. I see. I don't know much about the Martin Luther, the the one that you're talking about. The one that MLK was named after. Theo circumnavigated the building complex, finding several vacant lots, a laundromat, and a place called Shadow Recording. A quick search online found the website. Theo looked at the page. Theo looked at the About page. Shadow Recording was a videogrammetric recording studio that had booths of varying sizes, lined with hundreds of ultra-high-definition video cameras. After recording, the system used the footage to create 3D models, complete with materials and animations, ready to be used for AR, VR, AR and VR. If there was any doubt in his mind what these booths were used to record, it was gone when he saw the banners reading "Anonymity Guaranteed." Theo stepped into the business, a small, featureless room with a couple of chairs and a desk. He was greeted by a young woman with her feet up on the desk, if it could be called a greeting. Appointments are made through the website. You will receive a confirmation code after making an appointment. Use the code at the door described. Use the code at the door described in your confirmation. The woman's eyes were lit up, and she was flipping a stylus similar to his own. Can I ask about the business? You can direct all questions to our FAQ and support on our website. She fiddled with the stylus, swiping a thumb across it, and Theo received a link to the shadow recording website. I'd like to ask about a former possible client, Theo said. The woman's eyes looked toward him through the full vision app she was using. Her expression said he was an idiot. Any and all clients are completely confidential. If you are surveilling any former, current, or potential client, you can expect legal action. I have reason to believe that the client may have been victim to crimes committed in or around your business. There are a lot of vague descriptors in that claim. If there were any crimes... If there were any crimes committed within the business premises, it would be a violation of the user agreement, and the perpetrators would be subject to legal action, the woman said. Theo rolled his acrylic eyes. Even if you had a warrant, I can't provide that information. Can't or won't? Whichever's funnier. Pick one. What even is the point of this office? Security. Not very secure if your clients are using your business to commit crimes, isn't it? If you have a warrant, you can provide it to the admins on our website. If there's nothing else, you can leave the premises, or you may be subject to or you may be considered trespassing or loitering, and would be subject to legal action. Yeah, I got it, Theo said, throwing his hands up with annoyed frustration. Thank you for your time. Come back soon, the woman said, as Theo stepped out the door. Have them get saved by the pirated movie. That's origins go back to the VHS. Huh. Okay. The DVD contains a little girl coming out of a well. I just watched The Ring the other day. It's not bad. "7 days. Theo returned to his vehicle and moved to the next location, where a CCTV camera had caught a reflection of Christina. She was spotted outside of a fast food restaurant. The location was quite busy, and now that he knew what to look for, following Christina's movement wasn't too difficult. All the passers-by seemed to give an invisible spot a wide berth. Unfortunately, he wasn't able to continue following her once she was out of frame, and there weren't any CCTV cameras nearby. The last capture, where she had been spotted by a camera a few different times, was in a derelict residential neighborhood in Mattapan, and again, there were no other CCTV cameras nearby. nor was he able to tell her direction or where specifically she went. He decided to try his luck with the fast food restaurant and began asking people if they remembered seeing her. It didn't work out so well, as that location was a favorite among the destitute and drug addicted. Some people did remember seeing her, but did not watch her every move and could not provide information about where she was going beyond west. He felt like there wasn't much more he could do to narrow down her movements. Shortly after returning to his vehicle, Theo received a message from the medical examiner. He was able to pull more fragments of Christina's interface out of her brainstem to be given over to the forensics team, but he didn't feel confident that he had enough fragments to rebuild the implant, and the probability of pulling data from it was virtually 0%. He did, however, confirm that the young woman was violently raped. He was already in the process of gathering fluid and hair for DNA typing. Theo felt there wasn't much more he could do at the moment. The sun was getting low above the horizon when Theo decided to call it quits for the day, but he wasn't quite ready to go home just yet. It was times like these when he would have enjoyed going to the bar, but he opted instead to set his destination as MCI Concord. His vehicle whirred to life and was on an autoway within a minute. He arrived not 10 minutes later. "Hey there, Maxie. Welcome in." The little girl's name is Marie, and she gives birth to a hand, and the hand comes out of a TV and saves everyone from the brainstem thing. Okay. Ooh, I just got all lightheaded just sitting up in my chair. The vehicle delivered him to the visitor entrance. Even though he didn't necessarily need to, he made sure to display his police badge and gun. Once inside the door, he went straight to the armory. He always enjoyed watching the security officer's eyes light up when he pushed across his Taurus 44 to be locked up. Without fail, every time the officers checked the weapon, they would look at Theo for approval, which he would give. And they would spin the cylinder and flip it closed like an action hero. He didn't blame them. Theo often did it himself whenever he was at the range. Theo made sure to give the camera a direct smile and a wave, and waited until the security officer let him leave. He returned to visitor check-in and went through all the standard procedures, going through metal detectors and receiving a pat-down before being escorted to the visiting room. He waited alone in the spacious room for a few minutes. The faint sounds of door buzzers grew louder until a final loud buzz accompanied a young man wearing a gray scrub shirt and black pants. Theo stood up to greet him. "Hey, Theo," the prisoner said. "Hey, Ellis," Theo responded, shaking his hand. Ellis Royalkin was 22 and was 2 years into a 12-year sentence for driving under the influence of THC and vehicular manslaughter. The two sat down on opposite sides of the table. "How are you doing?" Ellis asked. Theo shrugged. "Okay, I guess. Started a new case that seems a little different from usual." "Oh, yeah? I don't imagine you can tell me much about it." "No, afraid not. Though, I don't know. I might need the insight of a young person. Be on the lookout for questions with little to no context. Not sure how much help I'll be, but I'll do what I can." "Thanks," said Theo. "Well, anyway, what's up with you? How are things?" Yeah, there are some morbid things in here. He said minors, not minors. Alright. I would tell you that I'm exactly the same as last week, but I actually did get a new cellmate. Really? I thought you were given your own cell. Did you piss off a guard or something? No, Ellis laughed. It's nothing like that. I got approved to participate in a pet adoption program. I've got a kitten now. Shit, really? Yeah, a little Bombay named Chad, or Chode sometimes, when he insists on pissing on my bed. That's actually what the main idea is. It's not really adoption, per se. More toilet training and helping them get ready for adoption. That sounds great. Theo and Ellis both gave genuine smiles. I love cats. We're gonna have to figure out a way to let me see the little bastard. I had no idea you liked cats. I always took you for a dog person. Yeah, dogs are alright. I do like dogs too, but I think I'd be a crazy cat lad if I weren't a cop. And if I weren't married. What, she doesn't like cats? Is she allergic or anything? No, I don't think she just... I worked a lot. And it seems like it could be a commitment. And I'd feel like I was pushing it on her. Oh, I see. Well, you could get a digital one. It's a lot less commitment. Though, I guess you can change settings to make it so it can eat and piss and shit if you're into that. It's all just cosmetic, of course, Ellis said. Yeah, Theo said with a half-hearted chuckle. Ellis saw that his mind was now on something else entirely. He may not have even heard what Ellis was saying. Is it that game? Ellis asked. Theo was slightly caught off guard. He had forgotten talking about it. Yeah. Oh, what's it called? Wonderlands? No, that's the old one for eyes like ours, and HMDs. This one's the successor. It's called Wanderlust, designed for brainstem interfaces only. And instead of the Battle Royale thing, it's more of a huge open-world MMO thing. It looks cool, I guess. You don't seem very excited about it. I don't know. I'm no stranger to video games. We actually used to play together a lot back in high school and college, even after we got our eyes done. But then it started looking pretty damn real and so fucking violent. I felt like I see enough of that shit at my job. I'd rather not see it in my off time too. Makes sense. Don't get me wrong, I'm not totally against the brainstem interface or Wanderlust, but I just want my wife back. Back to the way she was when Alice... Theo stopped speaking and avoided eye contact in the silence. Alice couldn't say anything. He just let the silence linger. "I'm sorry," Theo said. Alice was taken aback, almost offended. "No, man, you don't have to be sorry for anything. It wasn't your fault. It was mine," Alice said pointedly. It caught Theo's attention. "I killed your daughter. You didn't put me in here. I did that to myself." "You were just a fucking kid learning how to drive stick. I should have..." "You should still have a loving daughter and a wife," Alice yelled. A flash of anger filled Theo. He jumped up from his seat, and for a brief moment considered leaping over the table and strangling the kid. "Hey," the officer waiting at the door yelled. "We having a problem here?" he inquired, reaching for his baton. Theo took a breath and placated the guard with open palms. The guard stepped back. "Time's almost up," he said. Theo sat back down. No, Mar's been here for a while. For a little over a week, I think. Martyr likes doing some rhymes. Likes writing poetry. It's good stuff. Alright. Theo sat back down. "Why have you been visiting me so often?" "It's been at least once a week for a month now, I think," Ellis said. "I don't know, kid. There's a time when I wanted to twist your fucking head off. But then I guess I realized that, well, you're not going anywhere anytime soon. And talking to you is much cheaper than therapy." "The BPD doesn't provide therapy?" "Alright, that's not what I mean. Besides, you can't refuse visitation." "I most certainly can. But will you?" Theo looked at Ellis as if he had caught him in a clever logic trap. Ellis just rolled his eyes and laughed. Theo continued taking on a more serious tone. "In truth, after it happened, I started drinking. Again. A lot. And my wife was hurt because of it. Or because of me. So then I stopped drinking. And I noticed that when I wasn't drunk, I wasn't angry. Certainly wasn't happy either. But I found that the hate seemed to disappear. At least, I found that it wasn't you that I hated. How long has it been? 89 days this time. Oh, what's your high score? Ellis asked. There was a short pause before Theo answered. 4 years, he said. But I gotta tell you, I was real tempted today. I was looking over a crime scene and found some blue label. Theo expected surprise from Ellis. He didn't get it. Theo then remembered that Ellis had been taken into custody before he was even before he could even legally drink. And the prison wasn't really known for the quality of its bootleg alcohol. He decided to explain. It's like really expensive, high-quality whiskey. The kind of shit I've never had the chance to try before, you know? Not really. Well, you smoked weed, right? Yeah, but not that much. I can count the number of joints I shared on one hand. Guess I'd smoke one if I knew it wouldn't get me in trouble. But I can take it or leave it. Come on, I'm trying to make a point. What's something that you miss? I don't imagine the food's all that great. Oh no. There needs to be an apostrophe right there, guys. Nobody'll find it. Yeah, whiskey, woo. God, I'd fucking kill for a tasty burger. Yeah, imagine the juiciest $80 feast handcrafted by the fine cuisine artisans behind the tasty burger, Theo said. Ellis understood where this was going, and imagined turning away from it. I don't know if I'd be able to do that, Ellis said. Good job, Theo. Thanks. Theo suddenly felt like he was pressing for validation. The teacher said that we have an essay due, and I accidentally told him that I'm going to use ChatGPT. And he said he will know if you do. There are ways that you can use ChatGPT that don't use it to make your whole essay. Use it for, small parts and bits and stuff. And always double check any facts that are presented in ChatGPT. Sure. Jacques was a closer friend that he had known for much longer than Ellis, and Jacques' husband, Chris, was a psychiatric therapist himself. Neither of them had killed his daughter. Despite that, for some reason, Theo wanted to tell these things to Ellis. Maybe he felt so safe in telling him, as his judgment would be locked inside the prison with him. Can I be honest with you, kid? Theo asked. Ellis nodded. There's some stuff I miss about drinking that has nothing to do with the actual drinking part. I used to go to a bar called the Endless Wit. Obviously, it was a bar, so I drank there. But a lot of the time, for me, it was more about the ambiance. I enjoyed the darkly lit interior, how there were never crowds, and everyone kind of knew each other, even though we rarely spoke. There was live music sometimes, usually someone playing solo, moody jazz or a song on the guitar. Sounds straight out of an old detective movie, Ella said with a laugh. Am I really that stereotypical? Theo said, pulling at the lapels of his trench coat. I like the classic noir style, so sue me. Well, at least I don't have the fucking hat. But you have to remember, I'm using the free ChatGPT. Well, I mean, same thing still applies. It's just, it's even worse at doing an extended amount of text and stuff. Friday, I will not be able to be here. We'll miss you, Maxie. Ooh, you can use my writing companion? Even if you don't... I know you've said you used it before. Huh, interesting. Hey, that's fine, man. I'm not judging, Ellis said with his hands in the air. That bar does sound pretty cool, though. Maybe I'm not the best one to say, but I don't think it would be so bad if you still went there, just for the vibes. Maybe get a Dr. Pepper and snacks or something, so you're still patronizing the place. I don't know, that seems sad. Forgive me if I'm out of line, but isn't sad, like, your whole shtick? Ellis said. Theo felt attacked, but didn't say anything. But also, I don't know. Didn't Sun Tzu say something about keeping your enemies closer? I'm pretty sure he was talking about literal human enemies. I don't think it was intended to be applied to alcoholism. Alright, gentlemen, time's up. The guard stepped toward the table. Both Ellis and Theo stood up. Well, if you do end up going, have a Dr. Pepper on me. Have a Dr. Pepper for me. Will do, kid, Theo said. The two shook hands again. Ellis was escorted back through the prisoner's entrance, and Theo was led back to have his gun returned, and then to check out. When he stepped into his car, he settled into the seat and sat silently, staring out the window. The door closed and the vehicle began moving, but without a destination selected, the car created an idle pattern, driving down nearby streets with quick access to the autoway. Theo simply watched as the sky grew dark and the city became light, much lighter in some places than others. He still didn't quite want to go home, so he typed the endless wit into the destination field, then toiled some more before confirming it. It's going to take another 10 minutes to get back to the city. Shortly into the drive, the vehicle suddenly lurched to a stop, nearly throwing Leo from his seat. A short, repeating tone indicated that there was an obstacle in the road. Theo looked over the forward seats to watch a cat cross the road. Clearly a stray, but not nearly as mangy as some of that he'd seen before. The cat looked as if it didn't have a care in the world. It was at that time, as the vehicle began moving again, the majestic creature was out of sight, that Theo remembered Ella saying something about a digital cat. As he sat back in his seat, he pulled out his stylus and began browsing for AR apps. Theo wasn't surprised to see pet apps at the top, only that he had never looked for them before. He downloaded the first one and began thumbing through the initial setup. The number of sendings presented to him was amazing. First came the cosmetics. He chose a tabby. After checking out some of the crazy, unnatural colors, he went with the natural orange and white striped color. After entering an age of 2 months, Theo watched as the thing materialized on the vehicle's floor right before his eyes. It spawned in a sitting position with its eyes closed. When it opened them and looked at Theo with big blue eyes and gave a high-pitched meow, he felt like his heart was going to melt. It moved toward him and started climbing up his pant leg. "Ow," Theo said instinctively, expecting the stabbing of the creature's sharp little hooks digging into his leg. For a moment, he thought it could, but then the pain didn't linger. He was reminded that he couldn't actually feel anything physically. It was only visual and audio data that his cybernetics were capable of providing. Even still, when Theo outstretched his hand and the kitten began nuzzling his palm, he could swear he was feeling the incredibly soft, warm little animal. The rest of the ride was him fiddling with other settings. There were modes where he could increase the realism simulation, where he would have to feed the cat, keep it entertained, and clean up after it. None of that seemed very fun to him. He also opted against letting other people see and interact with it. Lastly, Theo chose a pale blue collar to match its eyes and gave it a name. "Chess," he said after seeing the name appear on a tag on the collar. He gave her a scritch on the top of her head. He started spawning toys and a laser pointer, and before he knew it, the vehicle came to a stop in front of the endless wet. The cabin was a mess with random cat toys, but they were all easily cleaned up with a single press of a button. Chess also already came pre-trained, so when Theo offered a hand to her and tapped on his shoulder, she ran up his sleeve and perched like a parrot. Theo stepped out of his car, but just before entering the door to the bar, he paused and took a deep breath. He pushed through into the darkly lit interior. Theo was expecting everybody to turn around and look at him, recognizing him and shaming him for giving up his sobriety or something, but that never happened. The few patrons in the bar didn't seem to notice his entrance at all. If they did, they didn't care. Even the bartender barely seemed to clock him. You're asking Vinny if they've ever had Mike's Hard Lemonade? Do you mean Benny? Because if that's true, no, I actually never have. I wouldn't mind trying it. But, nope. What's so special about the lemonade that it always makes Mike so hard? Had one the other day and it tastes alright. Who is giving alcohol to a minor, by the way? There was an empty booth on the far side of the room in the corner. It was his table. Just seeing it gave him a small sense of comfort. He walked over and slid in onto the bench against the wall. A digital menu appeared on the surface of the table in front of Theo. Muscle memory drew his hand to the panel for a glass of whiskey, but he stopped before touching it and instead selected a glass of Dr. Pepper and waved the menu away. He then selected a Phantom brand cigarette. Oh, can you guess what that's a reference to? An ashtray appeared in the middle of the table, gripping a single cigarette and a flip lighter standing next to it. He put the cigarette to his lips, lit the end, and inhaled deeply. Of course, it was a non-smoking bar, and Theo had never smoked a cigarette before in his life. He still hadn't, but he had seen it done on film countless times, and was simply mimicking the motions. Even though it was just a simulation, it was a damned good one. The flame produced its own reality-accurate ray trace lighting, and the burning cherry produced volumetric smoke with fluid dynamics. The simulation even included thermal dynamics, with the heat from the flame above able to affect the smoke. The simulation fell short, however, whenever he took a drag. Theo didn't have the hardware to detect how long he was holding his breath, how forcibly he expelled the smoke, or the shape of his lips as he did it. It just happened in time with the cigarette's vicinity to his mouth. It's just one glass bottle. This channel, nor I, its host, condones underage drinking. Please wait until you are 21 and drink responsibly, people. Just a CYA. Theo also could feel nothing, but his mind was able to fill in some of the blanks, however inaccurately. If he really wanted to experience the feeling, he'd have to try the real thing, or get a brainstem interface. Gradually, the smoke gathered into a cloud around Theo's booth. When the bartender approached with Theo's drink, he placed the cigarette in the ashtray and clasped his hands so as not to appear like some psychotic smoking mime. When the bartender placed the drink on the table, he spoke briefly to Theo. "Welcome back, sir," he said with a soft tone, then returned to the bar. Theo didn't exactly feel great about the greeting. It was a nice gesture, but he didn't love being recognized by the bartender. He began to wonder what the bartender thought about him, and whether he judged him. Theo got lost in his head as he picked the cigarette back up and continued smoking it. On the other side of the bartender, sitting at the corner of the bar, was a woman slouched against the counter, with black hair and a short red dress, reflecting whatever little light it could find. She appeared to fit in with the style of the establishment, but she was very hard to ignore. This is her. This is who I just described. He was surprised he hadn't seen her already, or saw her coming in. This wasn't one to stare. Theo wasn't one to stare. He only glanced at her, but he saw her eyes flick toward him just as he looked away. Theo tried to ignore it, but even after seeing her for less than a second, her image was burned into his brain. Gradually, it became something of an anti-staring contest, and Theo was losing. When he inevitably looked back at her, he saw that she was, in fact, staring at him. She had a subtle smile on her face. Theo looked away again, as if to say, not interested. You were told by one of your guardians that you could drink. And it's not like I'm going to start drinking and driving. Now, drinking and driving is, of course, bad. It is not condoned by myself or this stream. But, I mean, just drinking before your brain is fully developed can have some pretty bad side effects. You definitely don't want to mess with your brain growing in any way. Oh. Welcome back, Maxie. You may have just missed me telling you whether or not you are driving. You should try not to drink when you're underage because your brain is still growing and you don't want to mess up any of that growth. That's my suggestion. Take it if you will. Alright. Looking away didn't seem to be doing anything. He could still feel her gaze burning a hole in him. Again, Theo tried to ignore her, but again, Theo relented and looked back over to her. She was gone from her seat, and for a moment, Theo couldn't find her. From his vantage point, he could see the entire bar, but the soft lighting left something to be desired. It was as if the woman had disappeared. Just as Theo was about to increase the light sensitivity in his eyes, he watched a shadow approach from the darkness. The hairs on the back of his neck stood up, and shivers ran down his spine as the dark form entered the light. "Can I sit with you?" the woman asked. "So Pollo's aged people can smoke, but I cannot try a drink?" I never condone smoking for people that are Pollo's age. Every institution wanted Theo to tell her to kick rocks. Every intuition wanted Theo to tell her to kick rocks. Especially after looking at her and seeing that she had no visible public profile. It certainly wasn't a crime, and Theo felt it was honestly a smart move for an attractive young woman. For a brief moment, Theo considered running her through his police facial recognition system, but then thought about the nightmare fallout that could happen for misusing his resource. For misusing his resources in such a petty way. Even if people his age do smoke, I'm pretty sure it's not legal. Might be popular, but just like in the United States, there are young people, underage people, who smoke and drink, but that doesn't make it okay. He felt like this woman was trouble, but not in the same way as the femme fatales from the classic film and television Theo enjoyed. There was something different about her. Something off. But Theo couldn't put his finger on it. Contradicting his better judgment, Theo gestured towards the seat opposite to him. The woman slid into the booth. She looked at Theo with a smile. "Can I buy you a drink?" she asked. "A soft one, if you insist." "Cutting off early?" "Cutting off. Period." Kinda hard to do at a bar, isn't it? "I don't know. I've never tried to quit at a bar." "Is that what AA's been missing all these years?" The woman laughed. "I'm Lily," she said, reaching a hand toward Theo. He raised an eyebrow and moved to grasp it. "I'm married," Theo said. Lily pulled her hand away, making Theo grasp thin air. "I'm sorry. I wasn't trying to flirt or anything." The woman blushed and sat back in her chair, just as the bartender returned, placing the glass of Dr. Pepper on the table before leaving again. "Hold up, how did the music just change to spooky?" "I've been using the Halloween lo-fi and dark ambient music from Lo-Fi Girl on Spotify. I've been using it the entire time. It is Halloween month after all. It is spooky season." "So why did you come over?" Theo asked. "You seem interesting," Lily said, taking the glass furthest from Theo. "In what way?" "In that human way. You are human, aren't you?" "Mostly." "Metal eyes?" "Acrylic. The metal ones are much less comfortable, in my opinion." "I suppose you've got the oral implants to go with them?" Lily asked. Theo nodded. "What about you?" "Nope. I'm 100% good old-fashioned homegrown human," she said with a wide smile before continuing. "I think." "I drink alcohol more than water." Poyo. You think? Well, I'm pretty sure. But I've been on a journey as of late. A journey of definition, or without it. How do I know that I am human if I don't really know what human is in the first place? You could look at it through the biological lens. How much of your DNA matches that of humans? Pretty definitive, you ask me. I guess. But what if I'm the first of a new species that evolved from a human? I suppose that's possible, but generally, to be considered a new species, I think there's got to be something significantly different about you. Theo finished his first drink, then sat the empty glass aside and moved a fresh one in its place. So tell me, what's so special about you, Lily? She swallowed her drink as she thought. I'm pretty good at math. What's the square root of pi? 1.77245. I'd say that was impressive if I cared at all to check it. That's a pretty common question. Even if you are really good at math, the best in the world, I'm not sure that would really qualify you for being a new species. What else? I could be immortal. Immortal, huh? I suppose that'd do it. Theo took in her features and the texture of her skin, observing any flaws. You can't be more than what, 22? Theo wasn't concerned about the politeness of the question. Lily didn't seem offended either, only giving a sly smile and taking another sip of her drink. 22 is hardly immortal. You don't look to me like you walked away from any lethal injuries. Maybe I'll believe you if you come back in 200 years and still look 22. That's fair, Lily said. There was a brief moment of silence. Well, I appreciate you indulging in my short, strange conversation, Mr. Nameless. Theo, he said. Thank you, Theo. It was nice to meet you. Lily clinked her glass into Theo's as it sat on the table. Then Theo took a drink and stood up. Likewise, Theo said. In the blink of an eye, the woman was gone. Theo returned to smoking his phantom cigarette while he finished his drink, then left shortly after. The ride home wasn't too long. His vehicle arrived in front of a somewhat upscale apartment complex. The car dropped him near the elevator, which took him up to the 18th floor. He walked down the hallway to his door, then stopped and took a deep breath before continuing inside. The interior of his home had minimal decoration in contrast to the outside hallway and the rest of the complex. Theo didn't mind much. When he did feel it was a little bland, he would place some digital art around the walls to make it cooler, cozier. After placing his coat and keys on the wall, he started moving down the hallway. It was the moment he had been avoiding. A new fear that had taken hold months before. Theo pushed open the door to his bedroom. On the other side of the room, Kara lay in their bed in white underwear and a tank top. Her skin was pale, and her hips and shoulders were protruding. She looked cold, and she was lying disturbingly still. Theo couldn't breathe until he walked across the room and placed a hand against her shoulder. When she grabbed his hand with hers, he finally took a breath. "Hey, sweetheart," Theo said with a soft voice, but with genuine warmth. "Hey," Kara said. She turned toward him and gave him a smile, but the lights in her pupil revealed that she was still in her game. Theo wasn't ecstatic about it, but he was glad to see her respond to him. He feared what had already happened. He feared coming home to find her lying there, unresponsive, thinking she was dead. But this time, if it did happen again, he wouldn't be able to blame the alcohol. After leaning down and giving her a kiss above the ear, he rose to disrobe and put his holstered gun away, then moved through the kitchen. He opened the fridge to find it nearly full of bottles of meals ready to slurp, a meal replacement that was popular among those with brainstem interfaces. Theo didn't mind it much either. He noticed that there were the same number of bottles as when he had left in the morning. So I grabbed two and went back to the bedroom. "Hey," he said, softly grasping one of her hands. Her thumb brushing his skin was a sign that she was paying attention. He placed a cold bottle of MRS in her palm. "You haven't had anything to eat today. Alright, have good luck on your essay, Maxie." "Maybe not in meat space." Kara pushed herself up against the wall with Theo's help. Theo unscrewed the cap for her. "But you should have seen the steak I was eating when at the Hero's Feast before our raid." She started drinking. "What happened to the whole vegetarian thing?" Theo asked. Kara took a couple more gulps. "Well, yeah, in reality, sure. But the steak I had didn't come from a real animal." Kara finished the bottle in one more go before continuing. "And in here I can literally eat whatever I want, and my body will always stay perfectly slim and sexy." "I think your real body is slim and sexy," Theo said. Of course, he always thought that Kara was the sexiest woman he had ever seen or wanted, but he was worried that she had become too slim. He could tell that she was gradually getting up to a healthier weight, so he just had to keep on her. The couple continued chatting about Kara's quest as Theo completed his bathroom rituals. But gradually, Kara sank back into her game, and the room became quiet again. Theo slid into bed and wrapped his arms around Kara, nestling his face against the back of her head, just above her interface plugs. He could feel her pulse and her breathing, and while he was transferring most of his warmth into her, he could still feel the warmth that was in her core. All of these things told him that she was still there. She was alive. She was safe. And he wasn't alone. It was the only thing that got him to sleep. Okay. That is the prologue and chapter 1. 57 pages worth of writing. Damn, for a single chapter. That's a long chapter, guys. It's a long chapter. Alright, but at this point, I'm going to go ahead and call it. I want to thank you for watching. I really appreciate it. Be absolutely sure to go check out Suicide on Amazon, releasing today. And if you check the bio below on YouTube after you've liked and subscribed, check the link, check the description for a link to my Patreon, and consider supporting me for what I do here. I would really appreciate it. Otherwise, have a great rest of your time zone. Poyo, go to sleep. It is late for you. And I will catch y'all later.